Good morning, everybody. Joey Only, Caribou Weather Dude YouTube channel here for you, sitting at 3,953 feet above sea level in Wells, British Columbia. It's been a snowy bunch of days. We've had 1, 2, 3 storms coming in. We got more coming in. It's just nonstop. But we've been talking about it all on here, so I don't think I need to rehash weather this morning. We can maybe make another video this afternoon and talk about the weather. But what everyone wants to talk about right now is all the earthquake activity that's been going on in BC. There's been quite a few earthquakes, and I have things to say, things to show you. I got kind of the bigger picture right here. We'll go into everything that I know about the earthquake so far. So it was great yesterday around the time the earthquake happened. Arizona, my friend, he's a little nephew of sorts over there on Vancouver Island. He messages me like, "Oh, we just had an earthquake. It was shaking. And I said, "Whoa, stop. How long did the S waves go on for?" Right away I'm like being Joey. He's like, "How long did the shaking go on for? Can you describe the characteristics?" So he tells me like, maybe it was a minute long. And so in my mind, I kind of scale that back to 45 seconds maybe that he was feeling it. Whether that's not an exact, so don't get me wrong here. It's more about perception that I'm getting at here. Perception. And of course, they're sitting on really solid bedrock there, and Nanaimo sitting on really solid bedrock, granitoid. So it's definitely not shock-absorbing rock structure. No, that's a rock structure that will amplify the shaking. Sure. So I heard him say this, and then he sent me a bunch of clips, screenshots of people in community group there talking and saying their experience. And I said, instantly I said, sounds to me like it was a shallow quake, because I ended up being right. Because you're feeling it so strong over there in Nanaimo, but and of course right away they're like 5.1 magnitude, and they scale it back down. I think it's at 4.7 right now, or 4.8, one of those. They haven't, whether they settled on an exact number yet, I'm not sure. But they scaled it back, so like it felt more intense than it actually measured when push came to shove, right? Well, why would that happen? I was like, and the long length of shaking. I was like, okay, well, I would think that's a shallow quake. Well, that's good news, and we'll talk about all that good news right now on the show. Let's go. There it is.
This is bad news. My God. Right now. Anything can happen. Yeah.
I'll watch the video later. They try mopping this.
So actually, and this isn't just the only earthquake we have to talk about today. We have one that happened in Grand Prairie that people in Prince George felt. We had this one on Friday afternoon, about 1:30 in the afternoon. And then we had one this morning in Puget Sound. I have meteorologist Mark Engel, a couple articles from him. Of course, meteorologist Mark Engels is also a geologist. So him and I have this thing in common where both of us are actually weather and geology nerds. It's a big passion of mine. Of course, I grew up in Madoc, Ontario, north of Madoc. 1 mile from El Dorado Gold Mine, the first hard rock gold mine in Ontario. Ontario's only hard rock, but I make that distinction just so you can, for the rest of you people here in BC, understand El Dorado was not just a placer mine. There's no placer mines in Ontario. The first hard rock gold mine, 1867. Caribou Cameron, who was in this valley here in Barkerville, was there for the gold rush in 1867. Why does this all matter? Because Madoc to Bancroft has the 93% of all minerals known to exist on Earth. The Madoc to Bancroft geological corridor, only one place in Siberia is like it. So from the time I was very young, I was smashing rocks open, looking at rocks, and blah, 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 you get the point. And from there, I went on to working in geology and some mining operations and things like that, even here in town for a while under the old management. So geology and I are old friends. And for me, like, I see weather and geology as just part of the same system. And I know that's going to seem weird to you, but it's like, in a lot of cases, the conditions on Earth help make the rock if it's sedimentary rock, or help alter the rock if it's altered, right? However, if it's just straight granitoid, then that's obviously straight from the inside of the Earth, right? So, but you have this connection between what happens beneath us, how water moves through it. You can sometimes see that connection between, we're on the surface world here, but there's this world below us, this world above us, and the lightning strikes because of the minerals attracted there in the ground, and there's water there, maybe things that are conductive, and you sort of get the picture that geology and climate, they're not that different. And when you see fossilized creatures that died in a mass event or whatever, you like see that the above and below world are just part of the same world we live in, right? So it's when you love the natural world, you want to understand this. So here's the good news. And, I said this as well at the time. I said, well, this isn't related to the Pacific fault lines. Those ones that we're worried about, the big ones, happen off the shore, way on the other side of Vancouver Island. That's where the Cascadia subduction zone is. What we have up here are secondary faulting systems, which one of them moved for whatever reason. And I'm sure a real geologist and a real seismologist might have some better answers as to why it moved. But we'll have a look at this first before we kind of dig in. But you can even see in just the lay of the land, you can see some examples of what might appear to be fault system related. It's really easy for me to look at these shapes, and we'll just zoom out for a second just to give you a picture where that earthquake was, how close to Vancouver it was that people felt it. This one in particular, at least, thanks to Ryan Voutilainen, who actually put this together, exact location on this map. So thanks, Ryan. We appreciate that. So you see where this earthquake is expected to have located itself on the land itself. Yeah, sure, just in. But you can see, look at the inlet, look at the land, look at the water, and you might start to get a picture that there's some faulting zones there. Now, what is it that caused the settling or the change? Maybe something just let go, and I would imagine if you had millimeter accurate measurements here, you'd say like, oh, the land actually dropped 3 millimeters or something. Like I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying that's not the question. But you can see these subfaulting systems here, and maybe it's induced from water moving through. There's a lot of things that could have caused, but this is a pretty powerful earthquake nonetheless. But it's not the one that's going to cause our problems. The one that's going to cause our problems comes right here. You can see very clearly where the drop-off is, where the Cascadia subduction zone is. This is where our big one's going to come from. And we've had tens of thousands of earthquakes since the last big one. And, back at the very beginning of the 18th century, we're talking, 400 years almost since the last major earthquake on the coast, right? So there's been tens of thousands of earthquakes, and none of the earthquakes that still even happen off of here are generally indicative of the fact that the big one's coming. We just don't know when that's going to be. And when you think about, tens of thousands of earthquakes, but we still don't know, an earthquake happening doesn't change the likelihood of the big one happening this one way or the other. That's what I'm trying to say. And this is what meteorologist Mark Engels says a lot. And it's important to understand that, as I say, tens of thousands of earthquakes have happened here, and they haven't triggered the big one. Nonetheless, this isn't related to that faulting system at all. Still, as you can see for me, when you look at the seismic regions of BC, where's the most dangerous zones, there's this nice yellow zone right here in the middle of the province. Nowhere is exactly low, but we have the yellow zone, right? The yellow zone. So here in the Caribou Mountains, we are outside any real earthquake danger whatsoever. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Slight danger in the Rockies. Great danger as you get towards the west coast. Great danger down the southwest coast. Hey, what I'm finding frustrating this morning is I'm having a hard time locating a better quality, high-resolution map of faulting zones in BC. That's frustrating to me. I'd like to be able to have a bigger map where I could zoom in. I'm sure if I spent 45 minutes looking, I'd find one, but it's just not coming up quickly in my Google, a higher quality map than this, right? Nonetheless, you can see here, even by through this, ridiculously hard to see detail, you can see that there's a number of faulting zones there on the Sunshine Coast. That sort of area around Sea Shelton and Gibsons has its own thing going on there. That's not related to these larger thrust faults that you see off the west coast, the very, very dangerous ones that we're concerned about. I know one of the things they're going to be talking about through all this as well is a lot of people got their phones went off with the emergency preparedness. I don't know what you call it. It's like, hey, there's there's a child's been kidnapped, whatever, this is an emergency alert kind of thing. Well, this is an emergency alert. We got an earthquake. And then a number of people ended up getting theirs like 25 minutes after the earthquake. Some people didn't get theirs at all, right? So I think that's great that this is in the news and that we had an earthquake with no consequences where people were able to say, well, this didn't work. These are things we have to work on. These are things we have to fix, right? So here's what we got for details on the 21st February earthquake, right? Happened at 13:26 in the afternoon, magnitude 4.7 degrees at a depth of only 1 kilometer. So there you go. Lightly felt in southwestern BC as far as Prince George. No damage reported. Earthquake early warning alert was issued for the event. Seems to have had a lot of problems with it. So our Grand Prairie one isn't showing up because it's in the past day on here. So I don't have that on the map right now, but I have these two. This other one this morning that happened just right here near Tacoma, Washington, magnitude 3.4. Again, I don't think this is related to, the subduction zone. This is the area here of great concern for us, this offshore area. I think these minor faulting systems. Some of them are capable of producing very strong earthquakes. I know people talk about that Seattle earthquake that happened over 20 years ago and how strong of an earthquake it actually was, right? So it's not that these areas aren't capable of producing some strong earthquakes and even potentially damaging ones, but it's like there's sort of a limit on that fault, how far it can go. Meanwhile, I feel like look to areas that are actually in the San Andreas zone, and you can kind of see where that goes. It goes to San Francisco and out. So you see where that San Andreas zone goes. There's like still kind of a maximum. How strong can the earthquakes get there? It's and it's a big maximum, but it's not the maximum that we could see with the big one off the coast. So you can always go to ingleswx.ca. That's meteorologist Mark Ingles' own page here, and he talks about all kinds of things. So he's got a story this morning on the early morning earthquake that jolted Puget Sound. So we'll see exactly what he's saying. We got the 4.8 magnitude strikes near Squamish, felt through lower mainland. These two articles of Mark's that we'll have a quick look at here as we try to ascertain what's going on. At 3:45 a.m., a 3.4 earthquake occurred in South Sound area of Washington State. 14 hours after a larger earthquake hit southwestern British Columbia. The epicenter was around the southeast area of Auburn. It was smaller. It struck early in the morning. It was not felt as widely as the 4.8 near Squamish, BC. And, of course, 3.4 to 4.8, that's a big jump in the strength. It's not just a 1.4 jump in the way that you incredibly conceive it. It's like magnitudes and magnitudes stronger each. Okay, within 2 hours, the United States Geological Survey had received 600 felt reports compared to over 7,000 for the BC event. And there's a seismograph right there you can see from Mount Baker Middle School in Auburn. No damage is expected. Many people slept through it, even near the epicenter. It was estimated to occur at 25 kilometers depth. So this is a much different scenario than we saw in terms of depth of this earthquake. Different faulting system, different thing happened here. And again, I'm not a seismologist, so I'm not going to guess too much at what that is. But whatever happened on the Sunshine Coast was very shallow compared to what happened here in Puget Sound this morning. So there's underlaying faults under Puget Sound. Small earthquakes are common there. It's more probably just coincidental that these things just happen to happen. Less than 24 hours apart. Small earthquakes have been observed around Maple Valley, Auburn, Tacoma area. Many of these have depths greater than 20 kilometers. One in 2018 was almost in the exact same location as the one that happened today. Many readers will remember the 6.8 earthquake in 2001. That's the one I was just talking about a little earlier there. It was the strongest one to hit the Puget Sound in many years. Earthquakes of magnitude 6.7 struck under Tacoma in 1965 and under what was then Fort Lewis in 1949. So there's a bit of a history. It seems like every 20 to 30 years, there's a pretty good size earthquake in that area. So a 3.4 earthquake's not strong enough to trigger any shake alert systems. which uses data from nearby seismographs to send emergency alerts to nearby communities. It's active on the west coast of the United States now and British Columbia. During the earthquake, of course, the best thing to do is to drop, cover, and hang on. Your big concern is things falling off the walls. I could imagine I could have a giant moose falling off the wall into my head. I got things hanging all over my walls. So luckily I'm in an area where we don't have a lot of earthquake activity, so that's fine. Greater Seattle area is in the Cascadia subduction zone off Washington coast. The oceanic Juan de Fuca plate's diving under the North American plate. This motion creates cascade volcanoes, including Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens. Two very dangerous things that are still out there, just south of BC. Subduction offshore also generates very destructive earthquakes around magnitudes 9, similar to the 2011 Japan earthquake. The last of these along Cascadia subduction zone struck in 1700, creating regional landslides and tsunamis that inundated native villages up and down the coast. The Nisqually event in 2001 also... it was a local event, just as this one was. Okay, so research over the past 3 decades shows that the Seattle fault underlying Seattle and Bellevue generates estimated magnitude 7 earthquake about every 1,100 years ago. It did. So this strong earthquake caused numerous landslides and tsunamis within the Puget Sound. Local Native American communities have legends that were likely passed down from this event to the present day. Still, earthquakes like this one do not increase the risk of the big one, Mark's saying. Okay, we'll move on to the next article that Mark's got here. And then we will have a quick look at the Grand Prairie earthquake. Again, probably a completely different phenomenon from all these. I suspect that that's probably more fracking related up in Grand Prairie. Someone was saying to me, like, or at some Facebook group I was looking at, and they're like blaming the Seashell earthquake on fracking. There's no fracking happening in Seashell, people. So get that out of your mind. Still shallow nonetheless. At 13:30 in the afternoon Friday, this earthquake happened at Mark's house in Surrey. The shaking was mild, but we could see some rattling inside. You can see here a seismograph display from Queen Elizabeth Park, BC, showing the P waves and then the S waves, the seismic waves after. The S waves are the ones that you feel. The P waves are very fast and go out. So initial reports provided a magnitude 4.7. It was revised to 5.1 before better data led to them settling at 4.8. So 4.8 is what we're sitting on now. It's common for earthquakes to have small tweaks in their exact magnitude and location, especially when people feel it so strong. And it's hard to believe that, well, it's not as strong as you felt. Even though you felt it, it doesn't make sense. I know. I'm sorry. I'm talking weird here. The epicenter was deep in the mountains, west of Sea to Sky Highway. The USGS has no record of an earthquake larger than 4 since 2000 in that part of the province. A couple smaller earthquakes centered near the San Juan Islands subtly rocked the lower mainland and Victoria in 2024. Between Grand Cache and Grand Prairie, quake was felt. Now, it is on a river system. River systems sometimes follow fault lines, so it may not be fracking, but I know from being up here, there's a lot of that kind of thing. There's a lot of fracking camps and things like that out there and setups. So oil and gas is a big deal there. 4.7 magnitude in Alberta. So you got 2 earthquakes at 4.7 magnitude in just a couple of days, and both of them were felt widely, very widely. So it was, again, reported to be higher than it was and then was downgraded, right? Had a depth of 7 kilometers. It was felt as far as Prince George. I'm pretty sure I felt this one here. I felt the building shudder and snow fall off, and I was like, oh, snow fell off the roof, which isn't uncommon, that sort of feeling. And then all of a sudden my phone's lighting up. People are like, oh, there's been an earthquake. And did you feel the earthquake? I was like, well, I had some snow fall off my roof, and I still didn't think that I had an earthquake. It was literally like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. But then other people in Wells said, did you feel that? To me that morning. And then when I looked at the time lined up. I was like, oh, that was the exact time, more or less. It was about a couple minutes after the earthquake happened that everyone here seemed to report feeling, and, depending where you were. I'm on the second floor of an old building made of fir beams. I mean, there's not a whole lot of information here. Earthquake Canada seismologist Tammy Mulder says she suspects the quake to be induced by hydraulic fracturing. The Alberta Energy Regulator says it's under investigating whether it's the case. And that's when you pour water, sand, and chemicals into a high pressure, more than 2 kilometers underground to release natural gas trapped in rock formations. It causes earthquakes. We've known that there's 4 detected in 5 days in the Fort St. John area earlier this month. We know that Kansas and Oklahoma get a ton of earthquakes now, areas that are kind of out in the middle of seismic nowhere land. So these are very different situations. Each earthquake's a little bit different. So this one that happened in Grand Prairie area, Grand Cache, between Grand Prairie and Grand Cache, that one was probably fracking related. The Seashell one, shallow depth, harder to guess. I mean, it's not impossible that there's a human connection there because it's so shallow, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case at all. And then we have the one that's very deep that happened in Puget Sound this morning that, again, completely different situation, completely different faulting, completely different behavior. But nonetheless, all earthquakes that caught everyone's attention and remind us to start practicing better safety. Here's a little wake up to remind you to have your kits ready, to have extra pairs of shoes in different parts of your house in case you need to suddenly put footwear on. Have your first aid kits, have bottled water ready. Take seriously the threat. Be ready. It's given us a chance to look at our communication systems and our warning systems and find out that they're not good enough still in their current incarnation, and that's okay. We're learning. We're getting better. A lot of this is new systems that we're trying to put into effect, right? So on Interior Weather and Wilderness Watchers group that I run on Facebook here. Yeah, we felt the earthquake here in Prince George. This was on February 20th. Might have been this one. People say heard the rumbling in Atlin, BC this morning. This one was very widely felt. People are saying they felt something slightly at 11:43 a.m. in Quesnel. I'm not sure about that. I don't believe anything happened at that time, but I could be wrong. People saying they felt it at 1:37 p.m. today. So it's hard for me to know what is just people perceiving something and then thinking, was that an earthquake? Okay, so nobody felt anything. No warnings came either. Yeah, well, there's not going to be a warning at that magnitude, Alicia, because it's not a powerful enough earthquake to do any real damage. So there's nothing worth warning you about. My slide glass doors in the closet were shaking. Time to stop the oil companies from fracking. And this is really the truth of it. It's like not only is fracking make us more in danger of earthquakes here, but it's also making us more in danger of climate change, right? It's like the whole system. We can create more jobs now with the green energy revolution, create more wealth for everybody with the green energy revolution. It's time to make the damn change. It's time to make the change. So, yep. Yes, at Nest Lake, my computer monitors were shaking. It woke the husband up. And there's a shift in tectonic plates, someone said. Again, I was fixing cross, so again, you get these reports that to me just seem kind of out there. They're not really, so you just got to be really careful, like we will be able to measure and monitor actual shaking in the ground. And if you're feeling something that, check USGS and see if something showed up there, because it really could just be where you were. There's also a lot of frost heaving and things going on at this time of year, which creates sometimes very, very localized shake effect that won't turn up on any of these graphs or whatever. So a lot of people here, Interior Weather and Wilderness Watchers, it's a group on Facebook. Feel free to join us. We've always got things up here. And everyone's just on top of this story. All kinds of people here talking about how they felt it in Vancouver. And I would like to spend time to go over all these things. 10 earthquakes in the past week. It seems like a lot, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's that unusual. I don't think it's dangerous. It's not really that. It's not a prelude to a bigger change. No, you're wrong. Incorrect. It's not a prelude to a bigger change. There's been tens of thousands of earthquakes off the coast. Tens of thousands, and none of them have created another one. And plus, it's not in the right place, okay? So it's not a prelude to anything. If it's off the coast and it's on the subduction zone, sometimes you want it to to it would be a good thing if it's releasing some steam, releasing some pressure. So just the fact that an earthquake's happening is not a prelude to a bigger one whatsoever. You're not a seismologist. You're not a meteorologist. Don't try to scare people, right? It's 20 seconds of shaking felt in North Vancouver, this person's saying. And it was that reports like that made me think this must have been shallow, and that's how it turned out to be. Anyways, this gives you a little bit of an overview. You can go here to Interior Weather and Wilderness Watchers on Facebook and find all people's reports yourself and kind of go through them. I think some of them are very interesting, where people are feeling it and how they what their process is and thinking about that. I think a lot of people are very scared by this having happened, but it was a pretty obvious double pulse in Surrey. I reported to friends like a 1,000-ton truck hit a speed bump in front of the house with the rear wheels making a bigger vertical shake. Other quakes I've experienced were more lateral and even twisty, but this was pretty much straight up and down. So it seems like something just let go. And, like I said earlier, I bet you if you had millimeter accurate reporting and recording and measurements, you might find that the ground is just let go in some place and shifted down. And when the big chunk of ground moves, boom, look out. So please submit an earthquake report right here. This is the last thing we want to say today. Here's, did you feel an earthquake? Look at all the earthquakes they're reporting here. 31 kilometers east of Chatham, Ontario, 2.7. So earthquakes in the last day. So you can go here here's the page that you can find it on if you want. It's at earthquakescanada.nrcan.gc.ca dyfy-laver/index-en. We can do better. We can do better than that. We could do better than you can have a website where it's Earthquakes Canada report. You write it in. Write it in up here, and it takes you there, not some really crazy, ridiculous web address that I can't possibly communicate to you all. Okay, that's the show this morning. More for you later today. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Hit like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Please support the channel, and we'll be back with you this afternoon with some more. Okay, bye now.